So, can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with your ride, or is that a secret still?
With my rod, yeah, I'm putting in a stereo and it's going to be dope. But I haven't started posting many
Okay.
pictures yet because everything's getting installed right now.
Is it one of the head units that pulls out like has a handle?
No, no. So I'm keeping the OEM one in there. I'm not touching the OEM electronics. That's all staying. Other than the amplifiers being bypassed. There's 3 amplifiers in that thing, man. Like 3 separate amplifiers. And the weird thing is 2 of them are in the back, but the other one is up front in the passenger footwell area. It's
Well,
crazy.
well, how many amps? I saw you showed a picture, and you
Yeah,
had how many amps?
I'm running 6 amplifiers for my system. So I'm running 3-way left and right. So tweeter, mid bass, and then a dedicated center, and then a subwoofer. So I'm going to have an extra channel or 2 left over. The mid bass are each getting bridged for 300 watts, and then the
Well,
tweeter and the
I guess
mid
I was
get
kind of curious
150.
why you needed all separate amps. Why was that your choice? Because I know they have
Uh,
like amps with like a lot of channels and stuff, right?
well, for one thing, is that Tesla's charging system, or not charging system, but their accessory system batteries are 15.5 volt. And if I wanted to get a regulator and step down to 14 volt or less, I could have done that, but I really didn't want to do that. I wanted to take advantage of the 15.5 volts that are native to the car. And there's not many amplifiers that will accept that kind of voltage input for the power. And the ones that I chose happen to be, but right now they only make stereo and mono amplifiers in that particular design. So I just got 6 of them. And it's nothing but wire. I mean, that's at the end of the day, it's just extra power wire and a distribution block.
Crazy though. It just looks crazy, you know?
It's going to
Like
be
if you had
dope.
that in your home and you just laid them out, like let's see your system and you just had like 6 amps right there, it'd be like, dang,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
It's pretty dope, man. I'm excited. And that 18 in the back is going to be dope. And it's not even to get loud at 50 hertz. It's so I can hit 20 or below without even breaking a sweat. That's the goal.
Wow. I've never used those infinite baffle subs.
They work well. I mean, not every sub works that way, but a lot of subs, as long as the Q is above like 0.5, you're mostly all right. You got to make sure the FS is reasonable too. Like you don't want to run a subwoofer infinite baffle if the FS is 40 hertz, because below that it's just blah, 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 doing all that crap. So you really
Yeah.
have to mind the excursion. But when the FS is lower, you can get away with doing it. And in car audio, you also get the benefit of gain, right? So that gives me a little bit of gain there. But yeah, and the other thing too is it's like the home audio guys where I'll see tons of 18s or 24s, on their front walls. I mean, a stack of them, and I'm not knocking it. It's cool. But then you'll see a bookshelf speaker standing next to it, and it's like, well, why? So you can have 30 dB extra of 60 hertz and below. It doesn't buy you. At some point, your fronts need to be able to keep up with your subwoofers. Luckily, it's not a lot of people that do that. But when I see it, I'm always like, why? No, don't do that. Get you some big boy speakers up front, or get you some high sensitivity speakers, that makes more sense. Distribute the woofers, those kind of things.
Can you hear the infinite baffle from the outside? I was
Yeah.
always wondering because like it's open to the outside,
Yep.
but now, like how is it obnoxious? Like
Low frequencies, it's not. No. I mean, low frequencies is not any worse than if it were sealed inside the car for the most part. Yeah.
so for the folks who don't know infinite baffle, can you kind of explain that? Because
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
assuming that everybody knows what that is.
yeah. I mean, the idea, it really is what it sounds like. If you take a baffle, so a baffle is responsible for reinforcing sound at certain frequencies. So as long as the speaker is radiating basically omnidirectionally, then any sound that would have traveled behind the speaker is now reinforced and goes back toward the front. So you double the SPL. And, well, actually, I guess you more than double it because it's like 6 dB. Is that right? Double? Anyway, you add more output. And that's what baffle step is. So if you take a mid-range and you put it on a baffle like this wide, and let's say that mid-range by itself measures completely flat, as soon as you put it on the baffle, the lower frequencies are going to be reinforced. The low to mid frequencies, because again, you got to worry about radiation. Some frequencies will be reinforced, other frequencies won't, and they'll just kind of drop in SPL. So you'll get in the response, you'll kind of get like a a dropped off response. That's baffle step response. So with that in mind, an infinite baffle will provide infinite reinforcement to the lowest of frequencies, down to 1 hertz. If it were truly infinite, it would reinforce the lowest of frequencies. But there's really no such thing as a truly infinite baffle, right? I mean, maybe it's the length of your room, and that's 20 feet. 20 feet, I don't know what that is in wavelength, but let's just say it's 40 hertz. I'm making up a number. So you would get reinforcement down to 40 hertz, and then also your room plays into that kind of thing. But that's what infinite baffle is the idea that the baffle is reinforcing the lower frequency content fully. So in a car, like what I'm doing, it's a different take on it, right? So in car audio, infinite baffle isn't truly an infinite baffle. It's the idea that you're putting a speaker into a location where there is no restriction from an enclosure. So that's the flip side of it. And that's how it's often used incorrectly, but we understand that's what it means. So the other side of infinite baffle isn't so much about the baffle. It's about that there is no enclosure impeding any of the acoustic function.
I just had a funny image.
Yes.
Is it that, like, if you wanted to imagine what it'd be like to be inside of the subwoofer enclosure, that's you. There's a sub, and that's just you inside of the enclosure.
Right. Yeah. No, that's very true. And then I guess the other way to think about the reason that people would want to run infinite baffle is because if you take a subwoofer and you put it in the right size enclosure, the roll off is the roll off is always dependent upon the enclosure size or the enclosure design, the port or seal or whatever. If you make that enclosure too small, then what you wind up doing is you create a peak at some frequency, but then it rolls off drastically below that frequency. And the opposite is if you go so large that the enclosure has no effect on the performance of the speaker. It's basically like there's no enclosure behind it. And that's in car audio, that's what infinite baffle is. And in home audio, really, I guess that's kind of the same thing. You'll see people do manifolds, like multiple drivers, dual opposed on a manifold, stuck in the ceiling or the sidewall or something like that. There's all sorts of ways to do it, but those are the two uses of the term infinite baffle.
Well, the way that I can kind of understand it is like the way my brain works is I kind of take it to the different extremes, right?
Yeah.
So if I take a sub, if anybody's taken a subwoofer and plugged it in and like played something out of it, that you don't hear any bass.
Yeah.
That's like, what do you call that? It's like the opposite, like a zero baffle. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
And why is that? Why is it that you don't hear any bass?
From just a subwoofer on its own?
I mean, I think I know the answer, but I'm playing along so that you can explain it.
There's no acoustic suspension from the baffle or from the subwoofer enclosure itself either. Because the subwoofer's enclosure is what makes, I guess, the subwoofer do certain things, right? It'll change the response of the subwoofer natively, and so you can get to a certain tuning frequency or things like that with the right enclosure.
Angela said head to where we are. So somebody said free air. I haven't heard that. Oh yeah, free air referred to isn't it the same as what it used to be?
Yeah, so not in my experience, but I'm familiar with that. Free air most of the time is people will just hang a subwoofer off a rear deck. And the problem with that and what makes it different than infinite baffle is an infinite baffle, that baffle is sealed off completely. So if you're talking about the rear deck of a car and you put a subwoofer or let's say you hang some 6x9s off of that thing, that rear deck has holes in it so the panels can snap into place and various other things, pressure points and stuff like that in the car, pressure release points for the car. So that way, when you close the door, your ears don't pop. There's vents on that vent to the outside of the trunk. And if those vents weren't there from the rear deck into the trunk area, then your ears will pop when you close the doors. So that wall or that deck isn't completely sealed off from the trunk. Infinite baffle, you would lay like a layer of MDF down on top of it, and then you would spray foam it or silicone it. You would seal up all those holes so there's no cancellation of any sound waves from the rear of the speaker to the front of the speaker. That's the difference between free air and infinite baffle.
So like when you run it, Angela's telling me where to go. So when you run it, let's say with no baffle, right? Just you're playing the woofer by itself, and there's no bass. Does it have anything to do with like the back wave canceling what's coming out the front or anything?
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of what I was saying about the freer difference versus infinite baffle is when you seal those holes up, there's no more cancellation from the rear wave to the front wave.
All right, everybody, we do the Daily Hi-Fi podcast every Monday, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So make sure you join up to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Daily Hi-Fi, and we will see you there for the big show every Monday. Yeah.